Welcome back, travelers, and as you can see, today is a special episode. It is 10 obscure creature types and things that are interesting about them. But I'll probably just reduce it to 10 obscure creature types for the purposes of getting more people to click on it. The point is, this was kindly recommended to me by Daniel Gonzalez, and I will be using this particular structure possibly more often, because I found during my research in this particular thing, I found a bunch of creature types that some of which I didn't even know about. So without any more preamble, let's just jump into it. Let's talk about some creature types you may or may not know about. Starting this one off with a very popular one because of a particular card. In a lot of these cases, a lot of these creature types, the reason they're considered obscure is because of the fact that they have a very low number of cards with their name, with their type printed on them. I won't include things like Praetors, because Praetors were specifically just like these huge monsters that were supposed to be high profile, and there's only 5 of them, 6 of them. I think there's Ebon Praetor too. But the point is that this next one is popular because of its role in Modern. This is, of course, the creature type of the Lurgoyf. So the Lurgoyf first appeared as this really weird looking creature. I'm going to put a picture up of it. It's called the Lurgoyf, and it's very simple. But the flavor text was by a character named Safi Eriksdotter, and they're literally just saying, "Ah, Hans, run! It's the Lurgoyf!" And so the Lurgoyf was kind of just brought into this brand new world where it was an interesting creature based around an interesting concept. As a result, there was a cycle, a 5-card cycle of Vors, Magnivore. I want to say there's one called Mordivore. Yeah, because I was the one that ate dead stuff. I know that Detritivore was made in a later set, but the point is that these were creatures specifically designed to emulate the idea behind the Lurgoyf. The Lurgoyf specifically focused on creature types in the graveyard, and I believe the Mordivore did too, but it could regenerate. But then you had stuff like the Terravore, which was with lands, and the Magnivore, which was, I think, with sorceries, and then you had the blue one, which was instant, stuff like that. So each of these different creature card types mattered to those creatures. Well, the most popular of those Goyfs is the Tarmogoyf. Now, if you play Magic if you've played Magic for like a year, you've probably at least heard Tarmogoyf in passing. It's this creature that's basically, it gets boost for every other card type in the graveyard. So basically, the whole reason we have Tarmogoyf in the first place is because people really liked the flavor text on Lurgoyf. I recently have really enjoyed shrimp and like crab. I've never really been a fan of crustaceans in general, but they're pretty tasty. And this next creature type for number 9 is the Hominid, which are literally just crustaceans. They were basically Magic's answer to merfolk that they were trying to move away from. At one point, they tried cephalids, which were the octopus people, and then they tried hominids, which were these lobster people. These lobster people were kind of very primitive. Think of the deep sea dwellers in Aquaman. They were basically just like these really bulky, super cool armored crab people, right? We love money, 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 money. The hominids wound up being these forces of destruction on Terracer and other locations and continents in Dominaria. And as the waters cooled, they started to move and migrate because of the ice age that was happening on that plane during that time. And that was what caused them to kind of like come up out of the water and start dealing with everybody else that was around them. As a whole, they've kind of just been forgotten. They don't really have much to show for it. I believe there's only like 8 or 9 cards. I think one of them, there are 9 cards. One of them was printed in Dominaria, one of the newer sets. We haven't really seen hominids do much, but there is a small subset of people that love hominids. And a lot of these creature types that are very small or have very few creatures in them, they fall into that category of like, they have some diehard fans that would be like, I want to make a hominid deck. Okay, so this next one is the Thopter. Thopters are a card type basically meant to describe like a drone or a helicopter kind of thing. And Thopters have been around since the beginning of Magic. Urza created one. It was called the Ornithopter, which was designed to be like a birdcopter basically. And as a result, the Thopters have just kind of pervaded Magic. But what's interesting is that over the course of all of this, there are only, I believe, 12. There are 12 specific Thopter cards. There are only 12 cards that have the creature type Thopter, while there are about 40-something, 41-ish cards that produce Thopter tokens. So overall, you have more people that make Thopters than actual Thopters. And as a whole, they're usually artifacts, though they were printed as blue artifacts first on Esper, I believe, where the colored artifacts were common. So they're one of the first colored artifact tokens as well. So these are all very particular things to the Thopters, which have been beside every other card throughout Magic. This next one's for all you Roblox fans. This is the Oof. The Oof is basically, I guess you could best describe it as a brownie, and I don't mean the kind you eat. Brownies are an old, I believe, Celtic mythological creature that are basically kind of like goblins, but also like fairies, because they were all basically the same thing at one point. But I believe there's a card, the Shelkin Brownie. The Shelkin Brownie is an Oof, and he does not look. He's basically just a green goblin, not the Spider-Man kind. But one of the main things about an Oof is that they're tricksters. They're kind of like gremlins in the sense that they really like messing with stuff. In the older days, they would primarily mess with just random abilities like banding, but over the course of the few years, they've become more focused on breaking things like artifacts or just making it so they don't work. There was one, I think, printed in Modern Horizons that specifically was stopping the activated abilities of artifacts. After the Oof, which was focused on just kind of stopping artifacts from working, we have the ATOG. Now, the ATOG is in a very peculiar place because as a whole, if you're an old Magic player, you've definitely heard of the ATOG. There is an ATOG for every color. I believe the first one was the ATOG itself, and it's literally just this guy who's smiling, and he's got these big orange eyes. It looks kind of like Ridley without wings or horns, or a lot of the other things that Ridley's got. He doesn't look that much like Ridley, I guess. He's just got the same colors. But the main thing is that he eats artifacts. You literally have to sacrifice an artifact, and he gets bigger, right? So the idea was that ATOGs were just these creatures that got stronger from eating things, kind of like gremlins. And so you had stuff like the Oratog, which ate enchantments, the Chronotog, which ate time, the Psychotog. There was also a cycle of ally-colored ATOGs. Psychotog was blue-black. I believe you had to discard cards. I think you had two different choices. Yeah, you could either discard a card or you could exile 2 cards from your graveyard. The main idea being that the blue part was eating your memory and the black part was eating the dead. And so you had the allied color ones had 2 different activation triggers. I think they only did +1/+1 as opposed to plus whatever the other ones are going off of. I think there was also Megatog. Megatog was a giant artifact eating ATOG, just normal. Fun fact about this particular creature type though is that there was a creature called the Atogatog, which was initially going to be used for an unset, one of the silver bordered sets. And the idea was it was an ATOG that would eat ATOGs. And he was like this, he was their king basically. Similar to the ATOG, if you are an older player, you will most likely already know about the Slith. There's 6 Sliths. There's one for each color and an artifact Slith. They roamed Mirrodin. They kind of looked like apes and skeletons and humans all kind of mixed together. It's humanoid in shape, vaguely sapient looking. The main idea behind them was that they would hit you and they would get a counter because of it. And that became known as the Slith ability, despite the fact that no one has really made a new Slith in a very long while. You see the Slith effect on mini cards like vampires, that when they hit you, they get a little bit of blood and then they get a little bit stronger. And it was called the Slith effect when it was being passed around. Each of the Sliths basically had an ability. Red had haste, green had trample. I don't remember what the other ones had. I do remember that blue, because it was blue, had whenever it attacks and is not blocked or something, you draw a card. Leech is an uncommon creature type. There have been plenty of leeches in the modern Magic, but as far as there's Putrid Leech, which was pretty popular. You would pay 2 life, it would get bigger, so it would off of you and then be able to hit them harder. And then there was I want to say there was a giant Eldrazi Leech, which was epic, but you get the idea. The leeches have been around for a while. But if you go back far enough, it is worth mentioning that there is a card that references leeches that gets rid of poison counters. And I believe it's white. And it's like, the idea was that you paid life, so it was sucking out your blood, but it would also get rid of the poison. It was very interesting, and it's one of the only ways to stop poison in general. Lycids. Lycids are weird. They're super weird. So The main idea behind the Licid as a creature type is that there are these creatures, and they are symbiotic in nature. Think the symbiote from Venom. They latch onto a host, and they turn from a creature into an enchantment, and they don't necessarily take over in most cases, but they do give them abilities. They enhance them in some way. For instance, let me just pull one up. Let's see. You have the Enraging Licid. There were Licids that were beneficial and Licids that were negative. The Enraging Licid was a red one. It cost 2 mana to put in, but you only need to pay 1 and tap it. And anything you enchanted with the Enraging Licid suddenly had haste. And the art, I mean, I'm going to bring up the artwork right here, but you can see the character, the guy. He's got a thing going on, and that's what's giving him the haste. Is this like, and it's enraging him and making him very, very active. But you have Licids like the Calming Licid, which was basically just a pacifism creature. The main thing is that their mechanic is very unique and weird, and I wanted to bring it up to those who may not know about the Licids. Number 2, Moonfolk. Now the reason that I put the Moonfolk into this particular list is partially because in the tier video I mentioned that they existed. I called them rabbits. A person called that into question on Reddit, I believe, and it occurred to me that a lot of people might not know that the Moonfolk are actually rabbit people, and they're based off of the rabbit on the moon that is very common in Japanese folklore, where instead of seeing an old man in the moon, they see a rabbit. There's a tale called the Tale of Princess Kaguya, I believe, and basically the idea is that she lived on the moon and she came down. She was all like serene and a princess-like, and they found her in a field. I think she was a Cabbage Patch Kid kind of deal, and you get this very fantastical, very just enchanting tale of these people that are very elegant. And well, if you look at Tamio, other than the green blue one where she looks like a person dressed up as a Moonfolk, you'll see that she's very elegant. She's designed to look like otherworldly, kind of alien in appearance. Number 1 on this list has never appeared on a Magic card on the creature type line. There has never been a card printed with Saproling. Now, some of you may be thinking, of course there are. There's Dryads and there's these, the Sprouting Thrynax, it's got to be a Saproling. There's got to be a Saproling here, or a Saproling there, a Saproling everywhere kind of deal. But no, there's never been a Saproling card. There have been Saproling tokens. There's been artwork made for the Saprolings. There's been things that reference Saprolings. There's been things that pump up Saprolings or create Saprolings as a result, or Saproling. There's been plenty of cards that do stuff with the Saproling. But there's never been a card with the creature type Saproling. And it's a fun thing to kind of just like throw at my friends from time to time. You're like, name this, like the creature type that does not actually exist. And they're like, chicken. I'm like, well, chicken's an unglued and it's printed on these cards and this card and this card. But Saproling is a real card. It's a real thing that people play with. People make Saproling decks. But if you make a Saproling deck, you're not going to be putting any Saprolings in the deck. They would all be produced by cards in your deck, like fungus or plants. So the fact that it's such a pervasive creature type, that you see Saprolings alongside stuff like soldier tokens or goblin tokens. Saprolings are there. Saprolings are a common green creature token, yet they've never been printed as a card. And I feel like that's part of their charm, is that Wizards specifically avoids making anything that's named a Saproling, because they're literally just like bundles of twigs and mulch that have gained some form of sentience and are being sent at you, but aren't elementals. They're not elementals, they're Saprolings. And I found that very, very interesting. Well, that was 10 creature types. I have been looking at other ones. There were some that didn't quite make the list. That's why I didn't have an honorable mention. I'm thinking about making a second video. If this one does well enough, I will. And it'll include some favorites of mine that I would like to bring to attention. So until then, please leave a like, comment if there's another kind of video you would like. I know somebody, I think it was also Daniel, that asked me to make one about planes and the different kinds of planes. That could be interesting. That one would be, I think, longer than this one though, since each plane has a lot more to it. But until then, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you again in the next video. Until then, travel well.